Last week we said that sealed is not airlifted. He seals what he marks all the way through. I told you last week that you already had a mark on you. Today, we're going to find out whose mark it is. 20 years ago, at this very church, there were people that walked around the church, circles and somewhat around the church with their hands raised, praying a demon out of me. That's right. It was a kind of exorcism, out loud, aimed at their pastor. And I'm not exaggerating that story. Some of you were here during that time. Some of you remember. And some of you, like me, might still carry some of that with you. Here is what I could not see back then, and what I want us to see together this morning. Every one of us in that fight during that period of time, the war that we were in, that included me, had the wrong enemy. We are a people who are at war. Do you see that in your world? Everybody has an enemy now. It's either the other party, or the other channel, or the ex, or the boss, or the school board, or that family member that now you can't sit next to at Thanksgiving anymore. And the fight feels real. So justified, so obvious about the thing that it's about. Let me ask you a question that Revelation asks us. What if the fight that you see is never the real one? What if there's a war behind the headlines, behind your headlines, and the person in your crosshairs is standing in front of the actual enemy? And underneath all of that, there is a quieter fear. Because Revelation says everybody in this war wears a mark. A sign of whose side they're on. And the unsettling part is not the mark that you'd refuse. It's the one that you might already be wearing and not aware of it. Where has the war recruited you? Where do you find yourself in the middle of the war? Is it that person who, when you just hear their name, it spikes your blood pressure? And maybe you've been arguing with them in the shower for weeks. You know that person. Or maybe it's the politics that you have that hand you a fresh enemy every single day. Not just in the nightly news, but throughout the day, you get handed more and more enemies. Or maybe it's the ex that you continue to prosecute even though that judge has gone home. Or the church person that you disagree with, and now you can't pray next to them. Maybe it's a number that you always check. Maybe it's an account or a scale or the likes on social media. It's a scoreboard that tells you if you matter today or not. Maybe it's the upgrade itch. You know, the truck or the kitchen or the next thing that will finally be enough. Or maybe it's that feed that just knows exactly what makes you angry and it keeps serving it up warm. Or maybe it's the calendar, so full of proving yourself that there's no white space left for anybody else. Look, the first half of that list is the war, and the second half of that list is the mark. And Revelation chapter 12 and 13 are about to show us that they are the exact same story. Revelation 12 opens with the image of a woman in labor. And she is about to give birth to a child, and we're told that the child that is born is going to rule the nations. And crouched in front of her, waiting to devour the baby the moment that it's born, is a dragon. Friends, Revelation chapter 12 is a Christmas story. It is the nativity scene. Granted, it has a red dragon in it that your nativity scene may not have, but Revelation tells us that dragon was right there, ready to catch that baby the moment it was born and devour it. Every Christmas account in the scriptures talks about the shepherds and talks about the manger. But this Christmas story in Revelation shows you what was circling the nativity. You can't just look and see the nativity. You have to see the battle that was happening at the nativity. It was the war that you couldn't see. Revelation chapter 12, I'm going to start at verse 7. Then there was a war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon and all his angels. And the dragon lost the battle. And he and his angels were forced out of heaven. And this great dragon, the ancient serpent, called the devil or Satan, the one deceiving the whole world, was thrown down to the earth with all his angels. And then heaven announces the verdict against this dragon. And listen to the courtroom language that you find in it. Starting at verse 10 of chapter 12. Then I heard a loud voice shouting across the heavens, "It has come at last. Salvation and power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Christ. For the accuser of our brothers and sisters has been thrown down to the earth, the one who accuses them before our God day and night, and they have defeated him by the blood of the Lamb and by their testimony. And they did not love their lives so much that they were afraid to die." Catch the name that heaven uses. Not the tempter, not the destroyer, the accuser. You see, that is his job description. The accuser, day and night, running down God's people, prosecuting, blaming, inciting. And his signature move on earth looks identical to how it looked in heaven. He turns everything into an accusation because he can't win the case anymore. The blood of the Lamb closed the case. So he does the next best thing. He gets the defendants to start accusing one another. And notice how the chapter ends. The dragon, furious, defeated, knowing his time is short, he goes off to declare war on the rest of the woman's children. Everyone, which is everyone who keeps God's commandments and holds their testimony about Jesus. Now for John, when this is being read to the churches, the 7 churches that we talked about in the first week, real churches going through real persecution, it explained everything for them. The pressure that they felt wasn't random. And it's the same for you. If you belong to Jesus, that feeling that you get at times that something is against you is not paranoia, it's situational awareness. There is a war behind the headlines. And you were born behind enemy lines into a fight that you did not pick. But the dragon has 2 facts that he tries to conceal, make sure that we don't see or don't notice or don't realize. The first one is that he has already lost the battle. He's lost the battle that decides the war. It's over for him. And the second thing is he cannot unclose the case on you. He can't open it back up. He can make noise. He can do harm. And the book of Revelation is very clear about the harm that he can do. But what he cannot do, he can't win. So he settles for the one victory still available to him, getting God's people to aim at each other. Here's a truth that would have saved me 20 years ago. If your enemy has a face, you're fighting the wrong war. I know you look at that and you say, nope, not in my situation. Yes. If your enemy in life has a face, you are fighting the wrong war. The person in front of you, or the critic, or the ex, or the church member, or the relative, flesh and blood is never, ever the enemy. Flesh and blood is the terrain that the enemy fights on. Paul said it straight. We are not fighting against what? Flesh and blood. We're not fighting against flesh and blood enemies. The accuser's favorite disguise is a face that you know. And look at the weapon that actually won in that passage. Not arguments, not counter accusations, the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony. The war behind the headlines has never once been won by winning the argument in front of them. Like if you can ask any fisherman, a walleye never bites the hook. Not once in the history of fishing has a walleye bitten the hook. It bites what's wrapped around the hook. The hook comes dressed up as dinner. That's how the enemy recruits you into his war. He never shows you the barb. He wraps it in something that looks like righteousness, a cause, an argument, a person who is clearly wrong. And the moment that you strike, the moment that you bite, you're not the fisherman anymore. Surprise, you have become the fish. But you do not have to crack this code. You just have to keep the faith. That is the key to this passage. It's the key to the book of Revelation, and it's the key to our faith journey. The year for me was 2004, moving into 2005, very early in my ministry here at Hillcrest. Our leadership council had been studying for months the role of women in church ministry, what women could do, what women couldn't do, what the scriptures taught about this issue. And I want to be transparent with you about what we found. What we discovered was ambiguity. Passages that have been read more than one way by faithful people for centuries. We also found something else very uncomfortable within our own walls here at Hillcrest. If we had a woman doing pastoral work over our students, we called her a director. If we hired a man to do the same job, same duties, same responsibilities, we would call him a pastor. Same job, just a different title. That was the arrangement, whether we said it out loud or not, that kept us feeling biblically correct. But we knew that it was just full-on hypocritical. So we decided it was time that we owned up to where we're at and how we understood these scriptures with open hands, and we made a change. We said that women could lead in all the pastoral areas within the church except for one area, the lead pastor, which was the spot that I held. And we said it out loud to our church. We said out loud that we could be wrong about this, but we also said that doing nothing was a decision. We had to make a decision. I thought that that was going to be a day of celebration in our church. I remember that Sunday morning. I remember what I felt getting ready for it. And that Sunday morning, that's when the war started. People came in that week. My appointment calendar was filled. They came in sincerely upset. And I did what I knew to do best. I took the bait. I decided that the answer to the questions and the concerns was more theology. I thought I just needed to know the issue better and have a better handle on the whole situation. So I read everything. I ordered every book that could be ordered, and it came in. I had hours upon hours of reading. I read through the day, through the night. I continued to read. I read both sides of the issue, and I knew it well. I knew the position where we had landed. I even knew the positions that supported what we believed, but at the same point where those had things that were not quite right. I knew the opposing position better than anyone that came in to talk to me about that position. I educated myself. I built sermon series after this, so you could not escape the teaching from this pulpit. And in every conversation, I listened just long enough to locate the gaps in what someone knew and understood. And then I helped them. I filled in the gaps. I corrected them. I clarified as best as I could. And I answered every question that someone had. and I answered plenty of questions that they didn't have. I felt good people got tongue-tied after visiting with me. They had nothing left to say except, Pastor, it just isn't right. Meanwhile, people started walking around this church with their hands raised, praying a demon out of their pastor. One woman told me that I was the spawn of Satan. I thought that was a rude thing to say about my dad. Look, if you don't laugh, you cry. So I can still try and have a joke now and then, but barely. But I want you to hear where these people were. They were outside praying an exorcism over the church, and I was inside sharpening my footnotes. Both sides were certain, and both sides had ammunition. I won every single argument that came into this building, and I lost half my church. Best friends, gone. Good, godly people, gone. Folks that had sat in these seats for 50 years before me, gone. It was the most devastating season of ministry in my entire life, and the sadness of it has not completely left me even yet. And for the longest time, I could not understand what we lost it all over. Because I had answered everything. I knew the answers, and it mattered to me. That's what finally drove me to my knees. And on my knees, I had to confess something that took me years. Took good counselors in my life, good friends, experienced pastors, to say it plainly. I just came to the point of realizing that I didn't know how I should have fought during that season, but the way I did fight, I knew was wrong. I just didn't know how I was supposed to do it. And then somewhere in me, I finally saw that the people and I had been talking really about two different things this whole time. And theology was never one of the things. So I will do it right now. What I couldn't do then. I want to tell you what I think, and I think I'm right about what that war was actually about. Because some of you in this room lived it, and some of you may still be asking questions of what went wrong all the way back then. The people who opposed the change that happened here at Hillcrest about the role of women in ministry, they were not villains. Look, they were losing things that were worth grieving. When we made that change, I didn't realize what they would be losing in the process. When I showed that there was this settled teaching that held ambiguity, they didn't just lose a position, they felt the whole floor move of their theology, a whole floor of what they might believe. And if that can bend, what else could possibly bend? Some were losing the church that they recognized, and one that they had given 50 years to. And anger is what grief wears when it comes to church. Some were facing the hardest thing of all. Because if women could lead and serve and could have been doing it all along, then decades of silence, of gifted women getting shelved, it all then comes up for review. It's a very fearsome thing to have your own past audited. Fighting me was way cheaper. But it's one that they can't afford to lose. They stop arguing and they start accusing. It's not a character flaw. Catch that. It's not a character flaw. But it is the oldest play in the accuser's book. Because accusation is a move that makes listening unnecessary. I mean, if the pastor has a demon in him, we no longer have to listen to his Greek. And there's a part that still stops me cold when I think about this, because the people circling the building in prayer were closer to the truth than anyone else, including me. Because there was a spiritual battle in this church. They just had the wrong address. It wasn't their pastor, but it also wasn't them. Nobody in that fight was the dragon. Not outside the building and not inside. The dragon was the only one that didn't show his face. And he was the only one who won. I don't believe the dragon gave one rip which side was right about the passage about women in ministry. Because he got a family of God accusing itself. And he got half a church to walk out the doors. And that was his whole victory. So if you're still carrying some wounds from that season, from either side of that, I want you to hear your pastor. You were not the enemy, and neither were they. We were all together fighting the wrong war, and I led the way. And for that, I am sorry. And the dragon who sat and set that table had already lost the only battle that decided anything. So this dragon, as we're told in the scripture, is thrown down and he can't win. So if he can't win, how does the story like what happened at Hillcrest, how does it show up on your street? How does it happen? How does it show up in your life? Well, Revelation chapter 13 tells us that it comes to your street. The dragon comes into your life and he works it through two agents of his. Two beasts. The first one that's described in Revelation 13 comes up from the sea. And it's a monster wearing the dragon's own colors. He's stitched together from every empire, every evil empire that the prophet Daniel ever saw. Raw political power that demands not just taxes, but demands worship from its people. John's readers didn't need a decoder for this one. They knew immediately because they walked past the temples of this government on the way to the markets. Rome was the beast in their age, but it was not the last of the species. The beast is what concentrated human power becomes whenever it decides that it is a god. And history has kept a parade of those governments going on ever since, in every century, and wearing different flags. The second beast that comes up is stranger. It says it has horns like a lamb, and it speaks with the dragon's voice. It looks harmless. It sounds religious. Its whole job is marketing, making the beast power feel normal, moral, worth worshiping. And its master stroke is a mark. Revelation 13, starting at verse 16. He required everyone, small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to be given a mark on the right hand or on the forehead. And no one could buy or sell anything without the mark, which was either the name of the beast or the number representing his name. And then the verse, everybody knows, or at least knows what is in this verse. Revelation 13:18. Wisdom is needed here. Let the one with understanding solve the meaning of the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. His number is 666. Now, people have taken this number, taken the Hebrew letters of a name. Each Hebrew letter has a numerical value to it, and adds up those numerical values of that name to see how close it comes to 666. Who, modern times and previously, whose names come into 666. They put this against Nero, the popes, Napoleon, Hitler, and really half the names in the phone book. There's a friend of mine that once ran my name through it, and then he sent me an email saying, hey, I put your name through to see if you were the beast. Here's your number. Well, you want to know what my number was? I have it here somewhere. Hang on. Ah, yes, 639. So 639 was my number. which is, of course, about 27 points shy of the beast. And there might be some members around here that are kind of surprised how close I am, or maybe how far away I am. I'm not sure. But the honest scholarship, when it comes to trying to measure out or to make this number fit the beast, we have to hold this with open hands, because we're not exactly sure what we're supposed to do with that. But it is true that if you take Nero Caesar and you put those numbers to it, it does equal 666. And Nero was the one that was using Christians for lawn lighting. Look up Nero if you want to see the horrible things that he did to Christians. So the readers of that day, I'm not saying that they didn't add that up and that made sense, and that 666 and that leader was, when this was written, that person. But I want you to know that Nero and that person continues to show up throughout history. Continues to show up as one that oppresses and does the work of this dragon. And he gives a mark. And let me lift a little bit of a fear of this mark, because I have been asked, even in a hospital room where it's a dire situation, the person asks me, how do I know if I ever receive the mark of the beast? And I think, oh my goodness, this is what we're thinking about at this moment? But it's what's on their heart. And so I want to answer this question for you as best I can right here, right now, so we don't have to talk about it in those moments. I want you to look at where the mark sits. What are the two places where the mark will be? Right hand and the forehead. What you do and what you think. The mark is about what you do and what you think with that number 666. This isn't a chip, it's not a card, it's not a barcode. And it's copying something. I already told you last week that God already marked you, right? Remember holding back the winds at the corners? So that each person that was a follower of Christ could be marked. The marks already happened. The scripture is trying to, when you read the whole thing, you read that you already have a mark as a follower of Christ, and then the beast is marking somebody else. These are those that don't have that mark. So they're getting this other mark on the things that they do and the things that they think that line up with the beast. The mark is not technology. The beast doesn't invent something. It's just a counterfeit. The human number 6 versus the godly number of 7. It's not a trap for the unwary. It's not you can accidentally get this mark. It is an allegiance. It is the visible shape of who you are, written in your own choices, written in your own loyalties. And for the first readers, it had teeth exactly where the text says. Buy and sell. Join the trade guild, idle, feast, or lose your livelihood. Pinch the incense for Caesar or lose your business. Now, I'm not saying that this, having money is evil. I'm not saying that technology is the beast or that God is against you having things, whatever those might be. But if your empire fingerprints, the fingerprints of this evil empire somehow are showing up in some of your habits, it is not the unforgivable mark. You're not ever disqualified from God. You can't accidentally receive it because by definition, it's chosen loyalty. The question this text puts to you isn't, did the barcode get to me? It's a little bit quieter, and honestly, it's a little bit harder for us. Is where do my buying and selling, my doing and thinking already pledge my allegiance? Because there are two ways to lose a soul. You can lose it at gunpoint or you can lose it on layaway. So here's the entire week in one line. Remember this. The mark of the beast was never a number to decode. It's an allegiance you live. Everybody in Revelation wears a mark. Everybody does. It's either the beast's brand or it is the Lamb's seal. Everybody wears the mark. There's no unmarked option in Revelation. And you don't find out which one you're wearing by scanning your hand. You find out by reading your life. Keeping the faith is about whose mark is on you, not whose name you can decode along the way. If you want to know what mark you're wearing, I can tell you. Your pastor can tell you. I just need 2 documents from you. And one of them is not going to be the Bible. All I need is last month's bank statement and access to your calendar. And with those 2 things, I can tell you what mark you wear. Because those documents, they don't know how to lie. But what's contained inside those documents are the evidence of what mark you wear, the choices that you make, where your allegiances lie. And if you look at those yourself and you don't like what you see, here's the good news. The Lamb is still taking transfers. If you don't like the mark you see and you want to make sure you have the seal of the Lamb, transfers are still available. You don't have to crack this code. It's not that complicated. You just have to keep the faith. Like, I found out whose citizen I am on the far side of the world. The very first time I went to South Sudan, I went there and I was shocked by what they didn't have. They had these little houses. They were constructed of mud. They make a lattice work of sticks, pack it with mud, put this round thatched grass roof that would shed water. Sometimes no door, there was an opening, and you slept on the floor in there or on a cot, and whatever came in and out, came in and out. And this was like their life. This is the homes they lived in. And when I was there, they asked me about my family. I didn't bring pictures. I mean, this is back, you have to have physical pictures. I had like this little BlackBerry I brought along, no pictures on it. I didn't have a picture to show them. I told them about my family. I didn't have pictures of my life or anything in it. So the next time we went to South Sudan, I said, this time I'm going to bring pictures. Now, we were getting ready to go, and they said, instead of staying in the building that you were staying in before, you're going to stay in the village, and we're going to build houses for you. There's nothing more humbling than showing up at a place to do ministry, and literally they built you houses, these little round houses. They built them for us to stay in, like on the floor, on the cots, and they were so proud of what they built, and you just feel so humbled by the whole thing. And then it came up. They said, tell me about your family. I'm like, bingo, brought pictures. So I'm showing them my family. This is my wife. So my kids are like, wow. And they point out weird things in it. Like, what's that? I'm like, oh, that's my dog. And they're like, does it taste good? I mean, no, this is a pet. And they're like, what's a pet? They don't know. I mean, I'm like, I don't know if you had a goat that you really liked a lot and then you didn't eat it. And they're like, doesn't exist. Okay, I don't know. And then they're looking at my house and I'm saying, this is where I live. And I have this little sense, like, you know, that little bell that goes off in your head that says, this may not translate. And they look at that. And I mean, like, we're looking at the mud huts, right? And they see this and they're like, I'm now the richest person they've ever known. And they go, how many people live there? 5, me, my wife, and my 3 kids. And then they look at the picture and they're like, well, who lives there? All they're doing is pointing to my attached garage. I mean, it's part of my house. And I look at it and I go, how do I answer this? I'm like, my car lives there. They're like, you have a car? Yeah, I have actually 2 cars in there. Your car has a house? I guess. They're like, how many cars do you have? I'd never really done the math. I'm like, well, I have one, and my wife has one, and then my son has one, and my daughter has one, and my other son has one. You're like, holy smokes. Like, it's embarrassing at this point. And now, like, I don't want them to ask anything else about I don't want them to ask about, like, you know, my gym or going to the theater or any of the activities that I do. I don't even want to talk about grocery stores. I want to be done with the conversation. I am now the richest person they have ever met. And not only do you feel almost shame from that, but here's the other side of it that just hit me. Like, during that conversation, I realized in the conversation that I am unhappy with what I have back home. Like, it's not enough. And you're in that moment and you make this commitment to yourself. You say, I will never again complain about anything that I have. Even what I do have, I'm going to give away. I'm going to live my life completely different. I'm not going to live in mud, but maybe I can downsize everything a little bit. And I come home with this conviction that this is what I'm going to do. And it lasts until Tuesday. And all of a sudden it's like, no, I need this. I need that. And all of a sudden, South Sudan just becomes photographs. I want you to hear that last statement I said, that it lasted until Tuesday, because that is the most Babylonian sentence that I'm going to say today, because Babylon didn't argue with my convictions, and she didn't have to. She just waited me out. And by Tuesday, the water was warm again. My cupboards were full again, and I had my plenty and decided I needed more. The wanting came back inside me. That's how Babylon works. That's how she works. Not persuasion, just reabsorption. Nobody held a gun to my head on Tuesday. Nobody demanded my allegiance to them. But the empire just kept the water warm and collected the payment. So whose mark was I wearing that week? You just have to read the life, because that's one place that the mark always shows. So I'm going to give you an assignment this week so you can make your own assessment and do what you will with that. I want you to sit down for 15 minutes one time this week. I want you to take last month's bank statement. I want you to have your calendar open. And I don't want you to budget. I don't want you to organize anything. Just read them like they belong to someone else. And ask one question as you look at both of them. Whose mark is this? And if the answer stings, don't spiral out of control. Just pray one sentence right there when you think it doesn't line up the way you need it to. Just say, Lamb of God, take this back. This account, this schedule, the choices I'm making in my life. Lamb of God, take this back. That's it. 2 documents, 1 question, 1 sentence. And if you find that question starts to reveal something in you that you weren't aware of, or maybe there's an addiction that shows up in that work, maybe there's something, relationship, something happening that you're having a hard time overcoming, and it's not just a choice that you can make, but there's a real situation here, you need to get some help for it. You need to talk to me, you need to talk to a counselor, you need to talk to somebody about this situation and get things straight and get things corrected so you can have the seal that you want to have. Live your life the way that you want to live it, lining up with God's desires for you. Because if we can do this in our lives, it is a moment, the first step of coming home. Here's a line that this whole series stands on. Week 1, it pulled back the curtain. Last week, we walked through the fire. This week, we read the mark. You do not have to crack this code. It is no more complicated than just keeping the faith. That's what Revelation is written for. It wasn't written to scare calm Christians. It was written to calm scared Christians. So God wants us to know that the battle is won, that His mark is on you, and that you can be victorious through the blood of the Lamb and the word of your testimony. Everybody wears somebody's mark. This morning, I want you to make sure that your mark comes from scarred hands. Keep the faith. Let's stand and sing together.